Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. It is 11 after 8 o'clock. Welcome back. Our first interview will be kicking off in literally a minute's time. We're going to be looking at the issue around the importance of an integrity commission and why South Africa needs one. Standing by to talk to us about this very important matter is Director of Accountability now, Advocate Paul Hoffman. And just to give you a brief background, we do know that over the first decade of South Africa's constitutional democracy, corruption has had a profound impact on government's ability to deliver on the promises enshrined in the Constitution, especially on socio-economic rights such as housing, education, and health. Also in 1999, the government established the Directorate of Special Operations, DSO, popularly known as the Scorpions, to tackle organized crime, corruption, and complex commercial cases. The challenges were regarded as beyond the capabilities of a police service already stretched thin, and the Scorpions operated under the NPA rather than the police. Have they been effective up to now? Where and how can we ask the question about the NPA as well? Was it necessary to have disbanded the Hawks, whom, if memory serves us correctly, we know were doing quite a sterling job? Let's try and unpack all of this and also ask the question, where on earth is Hugh Glenister, a business person and lobbyist who was very involved in this issue as well? Director of Accountability now, Advocate Paul Hoffman, a very, very good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Julie, and good morning to your viewers and listeners as well.
Okay, you heard my introduction, where and how you're going to respond to that. And, you know, off air, I also spoke to you and I kind of suggested to you that there's not a day that goes by where we are not unpacking some form of corruption in the country. But of course, we're talking about such large scale corruption that I'm beginning to wonder if we as a country, South Africa, are not on the brink of collapse. What needs to happen for us to be pulled back from the brink of collapse? And is there hope for us as South Africans?
Well, that's a very big question, but I know we've only got about 20 minutes. Let me try and answer it in a chronological sequence so that it at least makes sense in terms of a story. If you go right back to biblical times, we'll know that corruption is part of the human condition. A more modern research into the phenomenon of corruption indicates that in any given population, there's always at least 10% of the people who have corrupt tendencies, 10% of the people who are not corrupt, and in between, the big 80% section is a section in which it is possible for the behavior of that rump of humanity to be controlled in such a way that, depending on the circumstances in society, they will either join the ranks of the corrupt or they will remain on the straight and narrow, like you and me and our viewers and listeners today. And one of the main circumstances that pertains is whether corruption with impunity is allowed in a society. Once people see that other people are getting away with corruption, the temptation to become corrupt becomes irresistible, which is why you are complaining to me this morning that every day when you wake up and look at the news headlines, there's another story about serious corruption in South Africa. Now, it wasn't always that way. As you pointed out in your intro, we once had the Scorpions, or DSO, Directorate of Special Operations. The problem with the Scorpions is that they worked too well. They saw to it that a whole lot of parliamentarians were prosecuted for what was called the Travelgate saga, where they were corruptly abusing their travel allowances. And that made them a lot of enemies in Parliament. And of course, when Jacob Zuma came to power in Polokwane in 2007, that was the death warrant of the Scorpions, because they were going after him. And the leadership of the ANC did not appreciate that at that time, that Mr. Zuma was actually bad news for South Africa, and that his corruption would bring us to the brink of failure as a state. So one of the first things that Zuma did when he came to power was to instruct Parliament to close down the Scorpions, who, as you indicated, were responsible for going after serious corruption, both on the investigation of serious corruption and on the prosecution. So both of those functions were in one unit, the Scorpions. They were replaced by the first version of the Hawks in 2008, and the replacement involved taking the prosecutorial functions of the Scorpions and giving them to the National Prosecuting Authority, which is where they've always been. There is a single prosecuting authority in South Africa at the moment. We think that should change. And then giving the investigative functions to this new police body called the Hawks. As you indicated, Mr. Glenister became active in this. He first tried to save the Scorpions, which he did not do successfully. And then he took on the constitutionality of the Hawks. And after a lot of litigation that went all the way to the Constitutional Court on 3 different occasions, what we have now is a binding decision of the highest court in the land, which says to Parliament, your first version of the Hawks is not up to scratch. We require you to pass remedial legislation so as to put in place efficient and effective anti-corruption machinery of state, which is capable of being adequately independent to see off the corrupt in our midst. The Parliament took the full 18 months given to them by the court to produce amending legislation, which was again attacked. And the amending legislation was in fact worked on by the Constitutional Court in the last Glenister case, which ended in November 2014, with the current incarnation of the Hawks. The Hawks have not been closed down, as you suggested in your intro, but they might as well have been closed down insofar as serious corruption is concerned, because they have not been an effective and efficient body.
Okay, so there's lots of other questions to be thrown into this discussion as well. I just hope we have enough time. The issue is how effective is the NPA? I kind of seem to remember that under Thuli Madonsela, we did hear about very high-profile cases being prosecuted. There's also the issue around where to from here for South Africa. What is this integrity commission going to look like if it does get passed? And
yes, okay, I'll take those, because otherwise I'm going to forget all the questions you've given me.
Go ahead.
The answer is that part of the state capture process was the gutting, the hollowing out of the NPA. So today the NPA is a shadow of its former self, and it does not have sufficient experienced personnel. You see, the court has actually said in binding terms that the anti-corruption machinery of state in South Africa should have 5 basic attributes. At Accountability Now, we've called those the STIRS criteria. And I wonder how many of your listeners and viewers will be able to count off those 5 criteria on their fingers. STIRS stands for specialized, because without specialists, you're not going to beat the corrupt who are very clever. Properly trained, because the training needs to be kept up to date all the time. Corrupt people are usually busy working out fresh schemes to outwit law enforcement. Independence is absolutely essential. That means independent of influence from the executive branch of government and from political interference. The R in STIRS stands for guaranteed resourcing that is adequate to enable the anti-corruption body to do its work. And most importantly of all, the second S in STIRS stands for secure tenure of office. If you do not have secure tenure of office, which was the problem with the Scorpions, they were a mere creature of an ordinary statute, then you can be closed down by a simple majority in Parliament, which is what the first Zuma Parliament did to the Scorpions. If, however, you are housed in a Chapter 9 institution, then a 2/3 majority of Parliament is needed if some politician decides that they do not want to have the Chapter 9 Integrity Commission, as we have called it. So it's quite instructive to reflect that had the Scorpions been set up as a Chapter 9 institution, they would have survived Zuma. They would still be in place today, and state capture would in all probability not have happened or not have been as serious as it has been for South Africa as a viable entity, as a non-failed state. So where are we now? Well, after Ramaphosa came to power as president, he realized that the Hawks were not up to the investigative work on serious corruption. So he created, by presidential proclamation, not by law, a body that serves at his pleasure. So if he becomes displeased with that body, he can close it summarily. That body is called the Investigating Directorate of the National Prosecuting Authority. And essentially, it does what the Scorpions used to do, except that it does so with 17 permanent personnel, about 100 seconded personnel, whereas the Scorpions, when they were closed down, were 539 strong and had plans to increase their numbers to 2,000. So you can see that the ID is a pale shadow of the Scorpions. And of course, its first leader was asked to resign by Shamila Batoyi, our National Director of Public Prosecutions, and decided that she could not work in the ID within the NPA under that leadership if the leadership didn't want her. So Hermine Cronje did resign in March this year and has been replaced by Andrea Johnson. So that is not a STIRS compliant body. It is really a stopgap measure that needs to be revisited. Now, the good news, because I know that you're depressed about corruption, the good news is that 3 of the 4 biggest political parties in South Africa are actually behind the idea of replacing the current setup, which is a bit of a mixed up situation, because the Hawks are still there, and nominally the Hawks by law should be investigating serious corruption, while the ID is also doing it to the best of its rather limited capacity. The ANC, well, let's start in the chronological order. During the 2019 municipal election campaign, the IFP came out in favor of the establishment of an integrity commission under Chapter 9 of the Constitution, and given a mandate to prevent, combat, investigate, and prosecute. So that involves a constitutional amendment, because the prosecution of serious crime by this integrity commission would detract from the mandate that the NPA currently has, and it would involve an amendment of the Constitution to draw a very clear line between the general prosecutorial work that the NPA does and the serious corruption that is reserved for the Integrity Commission in order to preserve South Africa as a state and to rake back the loot that the seriously corrupt have stolen, mainly from the public purse. The second part.
Can I interrupt you here, Advocate, and ask this question? From the time state capture was uncovered, and we know that we're talking billions upon billions of rands that has left the country, and then other corrupt government and business people within the country as well are sitting and then really living the high life. What are the chances, let's hope and pray, that an integrity commission is formulated? What are the chances of recouping those monies? Simply because if we don't get our hands back on the money as a country, we are going to slide further into poverty, unemployment, and this is a scenario ripe for an uprising. So that is another very serious issue, is it not?
The loot of state capture has been estimated at being between 1 and 2 trillion rand.
Ooh.
That's 12 zeros to the left of the decimal point. So it's a great deal of money, but because there is such a lot of it, it will be possible with the correct political will and with a STIRS compliant entity to rake back, I would estimate, at least half, if not more, of the loot. It's very hard to hide big amounts of money like that. And even if you buy a flat in Dubai or a yacht in the Mediterranean or a Maserati in Uzbekistan, that can be seized as the proceeds of crime, and it can be frozen in the place where it is and forfeited to the South African government if the correct litigation processes are followed, if the Magnitsky Global Act is applied in the countries where it is available, and clearly the money that is offshore, and corrupt people don't keep their money at home. They try to hide it far away. The banking system of the world is capable, with the modern artificial intelligence technology, of tracing each step of the way, from the deal between Transnet and China Rail into HSBC Bank, into the Bank of Baroda, into a Swiss bank or a bank in Uzbekistan or a Caribbean tax haven, or wherever the money goes. It can be traced and it can be hunted down and first frozen and then forfeited to South Africa. What you need to do that is the political will to go after.
Absolutely. We're going for an ad break. We'll be back with you in a minute or two, and we'll have at least another 5 or 10 minutes to wrap up on this issue. So please stand by for us. I'm talking with Director of Accountability now, Advocate Paul Hoffman, about the importance of an integrity commission. When we get back from the ad break, we're going to find out what's the process involved in forming such a commission, and would there be roadblocks in preventing from this happening? What would they look like? So do stay with us on the show this morning, right here on News and Views on Salam Media.
Me back to the comfort of my childhood than the smell of black seed oil being applied by my nanny. Now I'm using Tib black seed in my own home to soothe sniffles and coughs, to help with digestion and immunity, and of course, as part of my beauty routine. After all these years, I've come to appreciate the wisdom in finding comfort and shifa in trusted treatments like Tib black seed. You can find Tib black seed at all leading pharmacies or find out more at blackseed.co.za.
One of the most important things you can do on this earth is to let people know they are not alone, that the frustration of communities who struggle to earn the very basic is not their cry alone. Discharging your zakah is the starting point for creating a sustainable community and taking action. It's the impetus for creating lasting change and hope. Donate your zakah to the Al-Fida Foundation, supporting over 10,000 Muslim families in the Eastern and Western Cape of South Africa. We need your help to assist our neighbors of need. Contact the Al-Fida Foundation at 041 484 1288 or view or visit our website at www.alfida.co.za. The Al-Fida Foundation, your partner in social investment.
At Sentio, our Invest for Good philosophy is based on a real desire to use our investment skills for the benefit of broader society. We are committed to supporting our community by investing responsibly, giving charitably, and developing talent that will transform the investment industry. As an ethically based asset manager, we are focused on delivering superior risk-adjusted returns for our clients, regardless of market conditions. Visit us at www.sentio-capital.com for more information on our Sharia investment products and start saving with us today. Sentio Capital Management. Invest for good. Sentio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media, your humanitarian broadcaster.
Welcome back, and our first interview is the big picture interview, obviously the importance of an integrity commission and why South Africa needs one. Well, you have heard the first part of the interview with Advocate Paul Hoffman, and we'll continue unpacking this very important matter right here on Salam Media. Please do become a part of the conversation and let us have your views, your thoughts, or perhaps any questions you might want to put to our guests. So it's welcome back to you, Advocate Paul Hoffman. We will be together for at least another 10 minutes. I think at 8:45, 8:48 is when we will wrap up. Let's look at the issue around what it's going to take to form an integrity commission. Who's going to head it up? Who's going to police it? How are the politicians and the president himself going to react to something like this? Would they have possibly the political will to support it to the hilt, or we hope it doesn't come to that, but could they interfere and put a stop to this going ahead?
Yes, well, I think as we stopped for the ad break, we were discussing the need to nurture the political will to actually take the step of establishing the Integrity Commission under Chapter 9 of the Constitution. And I've got the story as far as 2019, when the IFP, which is the fourth biggest political party in Parliament, came out and said, yes, we need this. Now, in 2020, there was a very important resolution of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. You will understand, and your audience will know, that between conferences, the highest decision-making body in the ANC is the National Executive Committee. And it issued on the 4th of August 2020 an instruction to National Cabinet urgently to establish a new standalone, permanent, independent, specialized anti-corruption body, which is really stirs in so many words and means that the highest decision-making body within the ANC has recognized as a matter of political will that such a step is necessary. The DA has also come round in the course of this year to the same line of thinking. The DA had always wanted to keep investigation and prosecution separate, but the DA is now working on legislation, a draft bill, and in order to present to Parliament either as a private member's motion or preferably as a committee bill, the legislation that is needed to put the new dispensation in place. It will involve some amendments to the Constitution, nothing too radical, and it will involve enabling legislation that sets up what serious corruption is, what the bright lines between the mandate of the National Prosecuting Authority and the Integrity Commission are, how they are to interface with each other, and how most importantly, how the appointment procedures of the leadership of the Integrity Commission should be arranged in such a way as to ensure that those saboteurs and rotten fish who infest the National Prosecuting Authority, even to this day, do not infest the Integrity Commission. Accountability Now has not been idle about this. We've been propagating the idea since 2012. And in 2021, a year after the ANC's resolution, we realized that the urgency aspect was getting lost in factional politics within the ANC, and that no urgent steps were being taken. So we published a draft bill and a draft constitutional amendment, together with an explanatory memo and even an executive summary, which anybody who's interested can find these on the Accountability Now website. So there is, in fact, in the public domain, a draft suggested bill and a draft suggested constitutional amendment to bring about the new dispensation. And the political will seems to be a little paralyzed at the moment. I think the cautious approach of the president, the consensus building within his own party, is what is holding up the process. But there's certainly a resolution of the NEC is not something to be ignored. One would have hoped.
Okay. So when do we hope the bill will be passed? How soon? I do know that all eyes are on the elective conference in December. We can't wait till then. We need to speed this up as soon as possible. What sort of, obviously, once this bill is passed, we are looking at a whole host of role players that are going to be involved, people of very high legal caliber as well. And the one important question as well is, because we are suggesting that the NEC has taken this decision, that does that indicate that political interference will not be allowed to play a role here?
Yes, certainly. The new body will not report to the executive branch of government at all. All of our Chapter 9 institutions report directly to Parliament. They do not have a minister who is responsible for them. One of the defects in the NPA dispensation is that the NPA has a Minister of Justice who has final responsibility for the NPA, and it has an accounting officer who happens to be the Director General of Justice, not somebody in the NPA. So the NPA is actually run as a program of the Department of Justice. It shouldn't be. It should be run independently, like the other Chapter 9 institutions. I was at a meeting last night where somebody who's high up in the NPA suggested that the NPA itself should become a Chapter 9 institution. Now, that's not necessary because of the history and the size of the NPA. What is necessary is that the independence of the NPA and a reporting line to Parliament rather than to the responsible minister is what needs to be established. And of course, the accounting officer should be a Deputy National Director of Public Prosecutions, or in fact, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, rather than the Director General of Justice. Then you will get a proper separation between the two. So to answer your question about the where to from here, what really needs to happen is that the DA bill, which is under preparation, and the Accountability Now bill, which is already on the table, need to be compared to see how different they are. And a bill sponsored hopefully by Cabinet, but if not by Cabinet, then by the Justice Portfolio Committee in Parliament, should be placed before Parliament and before the public of South Africa, so that with the proper political participation in the process by the people of South Africa, we can clean up the mess, replace the limping Hawks ID NPA dispensation that is in place at the moment, with an integrity commission that has a mandate to go after serious corruption. We've suggested amounts in excess of 5 million, but the politicians will decide where the cutoff line between ordinary corruption, which the NPA will continue to deal with, and serious corruption must be drawn as a matter of politics or policy. And then the debate in Parliament will lead to the adoption of the law, and the recruitment and putting in place of the new institution will occur. A lot of people for the for the Integrity Commission will come from the ID. There are good people in the NPA. Let's not forget that. The trouble is that institutionally the NPA has been hollowed out, but there are many people with the type of expertise that is required to get serious about serious corruption being counted properly in South Africa. And I think that the SIU will have to be looked at carefully. A lot of delay occurs in the system at the moment because the SIU does a civil law investigation, undoes bad procurement contracts and all manner of irregular transactions, but does not do anything on the criminal front. So if the SIU were to be subsumed into the Integrity Commission, its personnel who investigate up to the civil standard at the moment can quite easily investigate up to the criminal standard, and they can be the investigative part of the Integrity Commission. So the skill is there. The Scorpions were good. The Scorpions didn't disappear in a puff of smoke. The people who were in the Scorpions have been redeployed elsewhere in the civil service and, of course, in the private sector. And if you give them the opportunity of working for a properly capacitated institution that is not hollowed out and riddled with saboteurs, which is the case with the NPA at the moment, you can have the new system up and going before the elective conference at the end of December.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you indeed for your time. We're going to have to leave it there. You truly have given us so much of in-depth information on this matter, and we're holding thumbs that we will be seeing the introduction of an integrity commission before year end. But undoubtedly, we will be in touch with you. Go well and stay warm.
Yes, it's freezing here in Cape Town today, but I'm glad you're in a better mood than when we started this conversation. I can hear it in your voice.
You've given me hope. What can I say?
Good.
God bless. God bless. Go well. Until the next time, as always, God bless. It is exactly 8:45 a.m. This is News and Views right here on Salam Media. And I guess it happens. It happens that from time to time, you're just surrounded by negativity, large scale corruption, corrupt people, entities, institutions. And then you hear the story around the unemployment rate sitting at 35%, but other people are suggesting that sooner rather than later, the unemployment rate is going to be sitting at 40%. And you start wondering and worrying about the future of our unemployed youth. You start wondering and worrying about the future of our beautiful country. And I guess that's one of the reasons I was a little low this morning. And I'm so glad that Advocate Paul Hoffman has left us on a note of positivity. And I think together we can, as citizens of South Africa, make a difference and will turn things around. Inshallah. 8:46 News and Views right here on Salam Media.